All right, what up, fam? Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to episode 2 of the Masters series. Jonathan, how freaking pumped are you to talk about what we're talking about today?
I'm stoked.
Crazy.
Everything we're getting into today, man, is like neck deep intellectual property. Like if you hear this stuff taught anywhere else, they probably stole it from us. Just being real.
That's fair enough. Well, I can guarantee you guys are going to get a lot out of this. I know this morning, Jonathan and I were going over these processes, these slides, and we were super stoked because, guys, I tell you what, this is going to be one of those episodes that I'm even training on stuff I've never trained on before. Jonathan's probably training on stuff that he's probably never trained on publicly before. And this has really kind of been the inner workings and like for us literally going back and going, man, one of the best ways that we can get people insight, information that they've never had before is to really explain and exercise the stuff that no one else has really been willing to exercise. What I mean is this is not the stuff you're going to find in a typical ad course or a program, anything like that. So this is pretty cool stuff. This is stuff that maybe you don't even reach until you start getting into really high levels of MBA, levels of education, and some of it not even at that level. So we're super stoked. When it comes down to today's, we're going to be, last week we really talked about the research side, the avatar side, empathy side. How do you really lay the groundwork so that when you go to build campaigns, you have all the information you need, right? That was week 1. This week is going to be taking that a little bit further and going, okay, now that we have the baselines of research, we know who we're talking to, how do we start to talk to them correctly? And so that's what ultimately we're going to be talking on. Let me go ahead and share my screen and open this up and let's jump in. Master Series episode 2, how to crush even the biggest, more fearsome competitors in your market.
All right. So here's what we're going to get into today. Okay. Last week we went through the research process. If you guys were on that call, you should have a master's degree now in how to go find out information about your ideal future customer and use that information to build an avatar and do an empathy mapping exercise. You should be like next level at that particular task now because we gave you everything. We gave you everything. All right. So this week, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about exactly how we stalk our competitors and create ads that they are going to hate to see because the way that we create them is so intuitive, so rooted in consumer psychology and science that they cannot be beaten. And I love it when people try to go head to head with us, Ashton, at media buying, because we usually just destroy them. And it's not like we're magicians. We're just doing this process. It's a well thought out, well supported process. So we're going to give you all that today. And implicit in that is a bunch of intellectual property that we have never taught before. So that's what you get for being here today. We're going to talk about connecting the research to come up with big ideas, which is all about generating appeal and value, okay? We're going to talk about creating moats, which is about productization and differentiation. We're going to talk about power questions, and we're going to use the empathy maps that we made last week to go ahead and start generating hooks so that we have that unbeatable copy going to market based on consumer psychology and empathy and really dialing in to our ideal future customer. That's what you're going to get today. And gosh darn it, it's valuable. I can't wait to get into it. All right, we got to connect the research that we did last week with big ideas. We got to generate something from it. We don't do the research just for the sake of doing the research. We want an outcome. So Ashton, hit me with what you got.
Yeah. So last week, if you guys remember, if you were on the training last week, we really talked really deep into research. So when it comes to last week, essentially the goal of this week is to go, okay, let's take the research process that we talked about last week, take the empathy side that Jonathan showed you guys last week, and then how do we ultimately transition that into actual advertising that you can go after your market, okay? And so what we've kind of realized is that like when the sweet spot here and ultimately what it creates appeal is when you take the research along with your empathy. So understanding what is the objective nature of your market, then understanding the subjective nature of your market, blending those together ultimately is how you create appeal. right? When you can take a marketplace and you take the logic, what do I know for a fact about them, right? Demographics, age range, locations, what are they looking at? What else are they buying? And then taking the empathy of how do they feel? How do they feel about products like yours? How do they feel about the pain or the desire that they currently have? How do they feel about your competitors or you? Ultimately, when you meet that in the middle, that's where you come up with appeal. And that's what we want to show you today of how to ultimately create that and then protect it. So let's go ahead and dive into you, Jonathan.
So yeah, when we talk about appeal in this context, and you're going to hear this word a lot as we move forward, especially in the next couple of weeks when we unpack the entire conversion heuristic. Appeal is a very important concept, but what we mean specifically from a marketing point of view when we talk about appeal is the answer to the question, how much do I want this? And that answer is going to hinge upon what we call intrinsic motivation of the ideal customer profile. So what that means is that I want to talk about the lizard brain as a concept. And what I mean by that when I'm talking about the lizard brain is, I mean, you have your prefrontal cortex where we do all the fancy synthesis and analysis that modern humans are capable of, et cetera. But deep down inside somewhere, there's that instinctual piece of the brain that just has, genetically coded, responses to things. And that's what we're trying to get at when we're generating appeal. So appeal is about satisfying that lizard brain, which is to say the underlying primal urges that contribute to our survival and happiness. That's what the lizard brain is always wanting to optimize for. And the closer you're able to get to the lizard brain, the more visceral the reaction will be in the go-to-market strategy at the point of consumption by the consumer, right? So that's primal survival, right? The lizard brain wants to survive in order to pass on its DNA. That's primal inclusion. The lizard brain wants to be included because it increases exposure to possible mates, right? Primal importance. The lizard brain wants to be important because it increases the opportunity for breeding. Primal urgency. The lizard brain wants to prioritize things closest to survival and procreation. And so you get primal urgency when you approach either of those things. And primal comfort. The lizard brain wants to avoid discomfort, as discomfort is less optimal for procreation and long-term survival of the species. So genetically, we're programmed that way. So let's hit the next slide real quick. All right. But here's the way that we break this down in modern marketing. We're pulling now from the Journal of Consumer Science and Psychology, and we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is a very helpful tool for us to think about when we're thinking about that ideal customer and how to go to market to reach them and motivate them. So the lower you go, the closer you are to the lizard brain. That's why I stuck that handy dandy lizard on there. Look at that guy. He's cool. So the closer you get to that lizard brain, the more intrinsic motivation the prospect brings. So let me give you an example. If I'm selling food, which is down there on the very base tier of the physiological needs, do you ever notice how Burger King commercials don't have a lot of clever hooks? Like they more or less just show you the beef, right? They're like, here's the burger, it's lunchtime, go get it, right? And then compare and contrast that to the very height of this triangle, self-actualization. And think about what kinds of products and services are in that niche. When we were pre-gaming for this, Jay Shetty came to mind, who, if you don't know, is a very well-known like self-actualization guru, right? And so selling those two things are very, very different. So whenever we're talking about selling things that are way down based on this, all we have to do is get a good presentation of products. And the sort of physiological nature of the need or the safety nature of the need makes it very visceral for that consumer. But as we move towards the top, like selling Jay Shetty's, self-development programs, for instance, the intrinsic motivation is much lower because we're moving away from those basis psychological concerns and into the more modern human prefrontal cortex concerns. And so we message very differently about those things. Can I get the next slide? I don't know if Ashton walked away here. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, buddy. All right. So another thing to note is that based on that and based on our approach to copywriting, the closer you are to those physiological needs at the base of Maslow's hierarchy, the more that pain-based narratives are going to work really, really well. right? So if somebody's not sleeping, for instance, it's going to be very, very easy to go in front of them and say, are you tired of not getting a good night's rest? They're going to engage with that immediately and viscerally, right? Whereas at the self-actualization level, the pain-based narrative of, are you tired of not being the best human you can be, is not nearly as compelling to that person at the top of the pyramid, right? And that sort of works in a gradated spectrum the further you move up the pyramid. If you're in the love and belonging tier, you may find that a pain-based narrative works. You may find that a desired future state narrative works, but it's a toss-up at that point. But you can firmly say at the bottom of the pyramid, pain-based narratives are going to carry the day. And at the top, you're going to have to use desired future state narratives. So for instance, that self-actualization, that Jay Shetty sort of approach to the market, it's going to have to be, hey, imagine a future where you're completely at peace with yourself and calm. And, and it's going to have to be that desired future state narrative that's going to really take the go-to-market strategy home. So based on Maslow's hierarchy, we sort of know how we need to message, and we sort of know what the intrinsic level of motivation is that a prospect is bringing into this entire process. That's going to be very important for us in about a half an hour when we get to the part where we're going to take this information and make ads out of it. So that's where we're starting. Ashton, back to you.
So now that we've kind of understand it, okay, how do we create appeal? It's ultimately, the synergy between what we know and what we believe, and then finding that in the middle, and hopefully we create the right appeal. And this is the cool part about advertising and marketing, right? Because while the research may be objective, how they feel is subjective. Therefore, the appeal that we have, it requires the balance between the two. When you balance the right things between both sides, that's when you find synergy, and that's when you find appeal. However, the next point of, okay, now that we found appeal, how do we protect the appeal, right? How do we protect the appeal that our market has for us now, right? Taking kind of the idea of like, okay, well, if someone is hot for now, how do you make them hot forever, right? Because as soon as there's a new hottest chick or male at the bar, that's when you start to lose dominance, right? And so we want to keep all the attention as advertisers. And so the way you do that is you start to fortify, right? We built the castle. Everyone wants the castle, right? You think of Game of Thrones, everyone wants that castle, but now how do you protect it for the long term? And that's ultimately creating moats, mechanisms to value, to exclusivity. Ultimately, this is how you start protecting your castle. And so this is what I want to show on. And this is exciting stuff because I've never really seen anyone train on how to actually create mechanisms. I've seen people talk about it, but I've never really seen anyone train on it. And that's one of the most important parts of any business, is creating these moats, right? Before we do, we've got to talk quickly about levels and market sophistication. In week one, you guys should remember we talked about states of awareness. Now we want to talk about stages of sophistication, because sophistication ultimately is advertiser focused, while awareness is market focused. This is how the market is. This is how they understand their markets, their problems, their pains, their desires. Sophistication is actually much more a guide for the advertisers of what else is in the water, right? You guys might have heard of, like red oceans and blue oceans. And are you in the red ocean or the blue ocean? Ultimately, that comes down to sophistication. The more muddy the water, the principle essentially is, blue ocean is not competition. If you think like sharks in the water, there's not much blood in the water. But when there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of blood in the water, right? And so ultimately, market sophistication is basically the measure of how mature your market is based on all the other products and ads they've seen before, right? So AKA, how noisy is your marketplace? How many other offers or competitors are they seeing? And that will dictate your advertising, okay? And so when we think about the stages of sophistication, the more you go up, the more creative you ultimately have to be, or the more different you have to be in order to stick out to your marketplace. Right? Example, if you're in a brand new market at stage one, and let's think back, to Tesla, right? When Tesla was just getting started out, and there really was, people didn't really hear of fully automated or fully electric cars, not automated, but fully electric cars. All they had to do was introducing the all electric vehicle Tesla, right? But as it goes up, as we get more competitors in the marketplace, Tesla going out and just saying all electric vehicle, it doesn't exactly ring true anymore because there's now other competitors in the mix. Therefore, the water is muddier and bloodier. And therefore, you have to come up with new ways to present your product to the marketplace to stand out, right? And so that's what we're talking about. And moats will ultimately help you do this. And essentially, it's what it is, right? So if you look at this castle, right? Let's pretend that this castle represents your company, represents the customer bases that you've had, the value that you're bringing to the market. Well, I want you to remember and think about like where the castle is placed, right? And that represents your place in the market. Okay. You've got, if you're thinking the old, Game of Thrones, right? You have one person managing the areas up here. You have one person managing the areas down here. Your place in the marketplace is where your castle is set, right? That's ultimately why you've created your business, or why the client that you have created their business, is because they found a spot in the marketplace to set up their camp, right? And then I want you to think, though, of all these people coming against the castle. These are your competitors. These are the other people that also want your place in the marketplace, and they want to overtake the castle, right? Fairly simple. And then, like I said before, your walls equal your customer base, equals your lists, equals your advertising audiences. Those are the things that you use to help fortify your place in the market, okay? Now, this is you. This is you as the advertiser, right? You're the person who ultimately is trying to help create these moats and make them as big as possible. Why? Because the bigger your moat, the harder it is for other people to overtake your place, right? Imagine, you can see this one, the one on the left, right? Where, hey, it's something to cross, but it's not the end of the world. It's something that probably could be, crossed in a foreseeable amount of time. But then on the right side, right? Imagine trying to overtake that castle versus the one on the left, right? And your moat, and what we're going to talk about today of how to build it, is going to be the thing that decides how long you are in the marketplace in whole, right? The bigger moat you have in business, as a theory, just the bigger moat you have, the longer that you are probably going to be a leader in the marketplace. Ultimately, like when I was trying to think of this concept of like, man, what helps protect businesses? What helps, what makes one business stay around 10 years and another one lasts 6 months? It ultimately comes down their ability to make themselves unique to the marketplace where no one else can really replicate what you're doing. Right. And so when we think about this concept to mechanisms, and we'll show you what a mechanism here is in a second. When we think of a mechanism, though, the more unique your mechanism is, the harder it is to replicate your mechanism, the harder it is to cross your moat, basically. Right. And so when we think about mechanisms, if you don't know what it is, it's essentially the proprietary person, method, or technology that allows you to fulfill on the claim or promise you're projecting. Okay. Claim or promise you're projecting. If you think about, something like SpongeBob, right? What's the thing that Plankton's always trying to get? He's always trying to get the Krabby Patty ingredients, right? The secret sauce. And ultimately, that is what your mechanism is. It is the thing that makes you special, that makes it when you're compared to your competitors, you win because you're more special, more unique, or it can help provide a better claim and back it up of what you're trying to deliver to your prospects or markets, okay? Let's dive into mechanisms. There's 3 forms of mechanisms, okay? There's a person, it's a method, or a technology. These are the areas I want you to focus on. When it comes to mechanisms, there's 3 different types of mechanisms you can create. So starting off with the person, what other areas of mechanisms when it comes to the person classification, how is it? Well, it's when someone is the unique skill, experience, or influence, and therefore allows for the completion of your claim, okay? I want you to think of it this way. When there's a person who creates a method, or a person who has the patent or the proprietary way, and ultimately that person becomes the reason people buy, that's when it's a person mechanism. And so that can either be a creator, an innovator, or an influencer, right? A creator, an innovator, or an influencer. Let's say the creator of the phone. When you had so few networks, right? Before they had all these where you can call anyone in the world and anyone had phones, right? The first person who actually would sell a phone is someone who only wants to speak to the one other connection on the other end, right? Because when the phone was created, you only could talk to people who had phones, right? And so if no one else really had a phone, you're kind of buying off the person, okay? Alexander Bell. Innovator would be the great example of someone actually did that earlier of Steve Jobs, right? He didn't create the phone, but he innovated the phone. And therefore, some of the people are buying products because it was Steve Jobs. Not necessarily because it was a cool product they understood, but because it was Steve Jobs, people would buy it. And so that's when you have a innovator mechanism. And the last one would be influencer. Okay, this would be, you see this all the time, especially arising lately when people are starting to use influencers to get their advertising out. Well, part of what they're actually doing is they're almost creating a small bit of mechanisms, a tiny bit of mechanism as the influencer, because they're using some of the influencer's pull, the influencer's influence to get people to purchase, right? And it's making that company unique over the other company, right? What's the name of Logan Paul's new energy drink, right? And people aren't going to buy it just because it's a new energy drink and it's better than Gatorade or better than everything else. They're buying it because an influencer is behind it, and they're almost using the influencer as a mechanism. No one's buying it because they're like, oh, wow. So all the science shows that Prime is better for hydration for athletes. No. They're buying it because there's an influencer behind it, right? That's a use of it. The next way is method, okay? Method. Proprietary process positioned unique to you that allows for fulfillment of the claim. This is another type of mechanism you can create, right? And there's two different types of method mechanisms, tongue twister, that you can use. First one is sequence, right? This has to do when there's a unique sequence of events that allows for better results, right? A lot of alcoholic-based companies, whiskey, vodka, anything that has distilling processes, sometimes their unique mechanism isn't actually the process or isn't actually the ingredients that go into that alcoholic beverage. It's the sequence of that distilling process that they're using as their mechanism, right? A combination would be another example of a method mechanism where it's the unique combination of ingredients, right? These ingredients all exist outside of themselves, but when put together, they create a new thing, which ultimately becomes the mechanism or the method that you are using, right? KFC, herbs and spices, amazing use of mechanism, right? Love it. Last one, technology. Science, it's a use of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. I wanted to dumb down the definition of technology to you because sometimes when we are thinking about mechanisms or how to create them, a lot of what you are going to create is technology, even though you believe it's like, oh, well, it's not a computer or it's not a robot. It's not that. Well, technology is just simply using the scientific knowledge that we have of anything for practical purposes, right? So a lot of what you're going to see in the marketplace today, or even maybe that you have, is a technology mechanism. And I want to show you how to do those as well. There's a couple different types of technology mechanisms. First one's assistive technology. Assistive. And essentially what that means is technology that helps assist a user to get better results. It doesn't give better results. It assists them in getting it, right? We'll talk about, hearing aid, for example, right? It does not help them hear, but it uses the assistive technology to help them hear better, right? Hopefully that makes sense. The next one is adaptive technology. And this is a technology that either learns or gets better over time, right? Think about software, AI, machine learning, things that over time get better the more you use it. The last one is independent technology. And this is essentially means technology that runs and operates successfully on its own, right? You get this technology before you couldn't do something, now you can, right? Another one of assistive would be like a washer dryer. It doesn't do it for you. It helps you get the process done faster. Now, when you get started into mechanisms, here's a couple things to keep in mind. One, the purpose is to call out and demonstrate the thing that helps you produce a service better, a product or service that is better than the other options your market has, okay? So always just remember, what is the purpose? Sometimes the mistake that I see when people go to create mechanisms is they actually take their brains off of the core purpose of, hey, this is made to call out and demonstrate to my market why this is valuable. And they start to get a little bit too in the weeds and try to make it this really cool mechanism and thing. Just remember, the purpose of it, though, is to prop up your big claim and promise. Okay. Not to surpass it, but to prop up. Okay. So 2 tips to follow. First, create as many as possible. Realistically, it doesn't mean that you have to go to market with every mechanism that you create. But when you have a product or service, or you're struggling in results, or you're not sure where to start, create as many mechanisms as possible. You want to get down to the granular details as possible here. Okay. 2 things though. It must be true, must be something that is easily proven, right? It's not something that like they just have to trust you on, but it should be true. And it should be believable, okay? Now, here's the thing, though. Believable just means that by the end of their advertisement with you, or by the time they're done engaging with you, it should become believable, okay? It might not have to start that way. In fact, sometimes it's best if it doesn't, but it needs to be an area where it doesn't, 1, send off the BS signal, like, oh, no, BS, this is bullshit. And 2, it must be something that at the end of in a very brief time, you can easily convince them of something to be true. Okay. The next thing is you must fascinate your reader. Fascinate your reader. Now, fascinate doesn't always necessarily mean, wow, let me go hey, Jimmy, get over here and see. That doesn't always mean that. It actually just means you have to fascinate it enough to where it stops them in their tracks and their brain goes, I want to know more about this, right? I want to know more about this. And this typically comes up when you're in the transition of like what Jonathan was saying, from lizard brain up the hierarchy. The higher up you go, the more fascinating it must be. And it almost needs to pull back down, right? Sometimes what the best thing you can do is when your product or offer is too high in that hierarchy, you need to pull it back down to the basic levels of survival, in order for them to go, oh, I want to know, this is actually really valuable, right? It's one thing to go, hey, every morning, I'm going to give you a 5-minute meditation, using, a Jay Shetty example earlier. It's like one thing for a company to go, hey, every morning I'm going to give you 5-minute meditations. It's kind of up there, right? Like, what does that actually do? But if I go, hey, every morning, I'm going to give you a 5-minute meditation, that after you're done with this 5-minute meditation, you'll instantly be pulled back in line with what your values are. You'll have greater focus and attention, and your life will get better. And I'm pulling it back down to like the biology. When you do X, you actually improve Y. Okay, so that's an example. New information, spark curiosity, or the last way to fascinate them is future pace the solution. Daydreaming. Get them to imagine their lives better because of this unique mechanism that you're giving them, right? So another great way to get their attention is just to fascinate. All right. What Eugene Schwarz says, I love this. This is a super easy way to think about mechanisms. Make it easier, quicker, and surer. Okay. Allow it to solve more of the problem than your competitors, overcome old limitations, and promise extra benefits. Promise extra benefits. Mechanization. This is the process of creating and transitioning mechanisms into your advertising. Okay. So essentially, if we think of mechanism, that's a person, place, or thing. Then we go mechanization. That's the process of doing this. Okay. It's the process of doing this. There's 3 ways to do this. You can either name the mechanism, which is when your prospects are already familiar with the process or method, then simply naming it will suffice. This is very rare. So this is typically more for larger brands or people who are spending a lot of money to get this mechanism in front of people. So people are already familiar. Most of you, though, will be on the other 2. We either describe the mechanism, right? You want to build a strong, quick promise and then follow up with the reason why you can deliver that promise. Describe how it works in detail. Or finally, you want to feature the mechanism, right? So for areas where there's high sophistication markets, the mechanism is so important to your success that you want to bring it into its main focus. Every advertisement should be really focusing on that mechanism. Again, thinking about, hey, when the water is really bloody, when I have a lot of competitors are doing this ad and this ad, you want to make sure you're bringing that uniqueness to the front of your advertising if you're in a really sophisticated marketplace. Okay.
People, the name the mechanism thing, you'll hear it referred to in research as productization. So if you ever want to go like dive into this, like in the Journal of Consumer Science, and learn about how to name mechanisms and how that works, it's productization you want to look at.
100%. Thank you for that. Cool. All right. We got some examples here. I want to show you guys how simple this actually can be. Okay. So let's talk about assistive technology. Here's a super easy way to do this.
They asked me to repeat the publication. I was just saying that what you're looking for, if you go to like Google Scholar, is called productization. Lots of information out there on it.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about OxyClean, and I'm going to kind of run through this and let's just see if you guys can pick up on how simple it is. Okay, here we go.
It's amazing. Watch how OxyClean unleashes the power of oxygen, making tough stains disappear like magic without fading or bleeding the colors. For pet messes, OxyClean is a must. It goes deep down below the surface to get rid of the stain and the odor. Have you ever spilled chlorine bleach on your colored clothes? Well, OxyClean is tough on stains without the damaging effects of chlorine bleach. If you save one pair of jeans, then OxyClean has paid for itself. Some clothes say no chlorine bleach, but OxyClean safely removes the stain, even on baby's clothes. It's the stain remover for the things that you love. Add a scoop of OxyClean to every load of laundry. It'll boost the stain removing power of your detergent. Don't just clean it, OxyClean it.
All right. The mechanism that they're saying is that the ingredients release the power of oxygen. Interesting. The mechanism that they're having here is that actually it's releasing the power. It's not creating, it's releasing the power. And they've made it so simple in the mind that literally all the ingredients do inside of OxyClean is that it just helps amplify the amount of oxygen that gets placed down into the stains that you have, which ultimately helps it lift and gets it out. Right? Simple mechanism that they've added in here. And it's almost always very hard to pick up on it when they're doing this, because when you do it, it just makes sense. No one's questioning why does it release the power of oxygen, right? But when a good mechanism is intertwined into a delivery of an advertisement, it almost just makes it feel natural because they've very quickly educated you based on demonstration. Right? Jonathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
What it is that really people like to overcomplicate marketing, but conceptually, marketing is very, very simple. You either have competitors or you don't. If you don't have competitors, then you can go in with, product articulation, like think early Apple before Android existed. You can just go in and tell them what the product is. You're going to have success, especially if it appeals to those baser sort of human concerns, right? But if you have competition, you must differentiate. You must differentiate. You have no choice. There are two go-to-market strategies: price leadership, differentiation. If you have no competitors, differentiation is implied. Therefore, you can more or less price with impunity. But if you have competitors, you have to justify your market positioning by answering the question, why is what I'm bringing to market different or better than what everybody else is bringing to market?
100%.
Right. So that's essentially what we're talking about.
100%. Let's watch another example here. And this one is going to be all around. So our first one was all about assistive technology, right? This helps assist the power of oxygen, essentially is what they're saying. Independent technology is something entirely different. It's when it works all on its own. And so I want to show you an example of that. Okay, let's go ahead and roll here.
Hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Tape, the super strong waterproof tape that can instantly patch, bond, seal, and repair. Flex Tape is no ordinary tape. Its triple thick adhesive virtually welds itself to the surface, instantly stopping the toughest leaks. Leaky pipes can cause major damage, but Flex Tape grips on tight and bonds instantly. Plus, Flex Tape's powerful adhesive is so strong, it even works underwater. Now you can repair leaks in pools and spas without draining them. Flex tape is perfect for marine, campers, and RVs. Flex tape is super strong, and once it's on, it holds on tight. And for emergency auto repair, Flex tape keeps its grip, even in the toughest conditions. Big storms can cause big damage, but Flex tape comes super wide, so you can easily patch large holes. To show you the power of Flex tape, I sawed this boat in half and repaired it with only Flex tape. Not only does Flex tape's powerful adhesive hold the boat together, but it creates a super strong watertight seal, so the inside is completely dry. Yeah, doggy! Just cut, peel, stick, and seal. Imagine everything you can do with the power of Flex tape.
All right. Triple thick adhesive is their ultimate mechanism that they're using, right? And notice inside that they really only drop that mechanism once. Why? Because they honestly, it's like if they make that the entire focus, then everyone's just gonna go, okay, well, what happens if I find a 4 thick adhesive, right? But then you can notice how they drop the mechanism, which is the reason why this is so helpful is triple thick adhesive. And then the rest of it goes into demonstration, proof, right? But that was ultimately the mechanism that they were using. And that's an example of an independent technology, whether or not we believe it's like, okay, it's just tape, it's a technology, and that's how they're positioning it to the marketplace, right? Let's do a little bit one more in more of a, maybe modern or e-commerce example here is Liquid IV. We talked about them a little bit in week 1, so I wanted to kind of bring them up again just because it's an easy thing to reflect. But look, this is the mechanism that they've created ultimately for their product, right? Cellular transport technology, right? They've created this because of the ingredients inside of their product. They've come up with this cellular transport technology, and essentially it's just the ingredients. They put it through together. It's in H2O, therefore it helps absorb faster. Great cellular transport technology. Very simple. Sometimes they use this complicated stuff, and you'll see this in products all the time. They'll pull out, complex formulas and the science and everything they've gone through, but realistically, they've mechanized their core product. What are the ingredients? What do we know about it? Why are those ingredients there? And then is there something that we can create out of it that makes us unique? At the end of the day, they're just something to put in your water to help you hydrate, like a energy supplement, like a hydration supplement. But ultimately, they've made it unique as a technology, literally, and presented it in front of you. Very, very simple, right? That's an example of the method combination, right? The combination of ingredients we have is ultimately created what we're looking at. Awesome. Power questions. Ultimately, questions are the right things to answer, right? Questions, the good questions in business and life will take you ultimately almost everywhere, anywhere you want to go, right? And so in the first week, we talked about really, the kind of the groundworks of who, where, right? And now we want to talk about the how. Ultimately, when you think about the who, that comes from your research, right? Your empathy maps, your avatar docs. The where comes down to your targeting, right? Platform, modality, maybe how you set up the campaigns, which is something that we're going to be talking about later on in Master Series, is the campaign side. How do you get all that stuff structured? But then how is the positioning, right? And like Jonathan mentioned earlier, there's really only 2 types of positioning that you have inside of marketing, right? If you want to simplify it all down, it ultimately comes down to either value leadership. You're going to beat your competitors based on the value you are willing to exchange to your marketplace, or you will be in cost leadership, meaning the cost of which you are going to come to the market. Are you going to compete on value, meaning you can charge higher prices, it's less price effect or price focus, or are you going to come at the market in cost leadership? Right? You think about the great value brands that you see at Sam's or Walmart or any of the Costco's, right? Any grocery store, they have those value brands. And what they actually mean is they're actually doing the inverse, They're actually just willing to give you the product or something that you are requesting for a cost leadership play, meaning we're going to give you leadership in cost and we are cheaper than the others, right? Other ones, you go to a place like Whole Foods, maybe you can get the same food that maybe you can get at a Walmart or a Sam's much cheaper, but it's going to be more expensive at Whole Foods because we are going to give greater value in exchange, meaning the ingredients are better. Maybe you can have more trust on where it's grown. Maybe we don't use the same artificial ingredients that other people use to make it cheaper. We are giving greater value in exchange. And then finally, relevance. That's the ultimate thing of why, the last piece of the puzzle, which is what we're going to be talking about next week, which is the why. Why do they purchase? Why are they going to purchase now? Why are they going to purchase from you? Okay. So power questions, these are the things you always want to ask. And ultimately, it's going to bring you to your next phase, which if we look at the stages of sophistication that we talked about earlier, right? This is a simple way to look at how it's ultimately being laid out. When you look at stages 1, you can focus much more on the what you're providing to the marketplace. Right? When it's a brand new market, when Tesla came out with their first vehicle, they can come out with just saying, hey, all electric vehicle, buy it. Right? That's the what. That's stages 1, maybe even 2. But as you start to merge in stage 3 and 4, you ultimately start to go from the what, because they already know what the what is. It's actually how. How am I going to give you the what in a better way than my other competitors? That's the stage that we're in. And that's the stage that you start creating these mechanisms, which most of you probably reside in either stages 3, 4, or 5 of your marketplace. So the how becomes insanely important if you want to actually win. A lot of you might be going, man, why are my ads just not working? They were working a while ago, and now it's just all in the craps. Well, it could be either A, yes, platform volatility, but it also could be you've stopped really saying a new how. Everyone, you're starting to really just blend in with everyone else that's saying the what and the how, and you need to find a new way to come to your market and show them, this is how I'm better than everyone else. This is how I'm better than any other product or service. And if you stick with me or come to my product, I'm going to show you that how, right? And then finally, once you get to stage 5, it ultimately becomes the why. Why anything? Why should I do anything with your company or ad or products in general? Maybe they're burned out, and that starts to go into the identity play, which again, we'll talk about next week. But ultimately, this is the phase and the trajectory of what you need to do, or of all markets when they're advertising a product. All right. Cool.
Right on. Okay, so far what we've done has been a bunch of like sort of academic, maybe slightly ethereal approach to like the theory of why we do what we do, the way that we do it. And it's been hopefully very informative for you. What I want to give you now for the rest of the presentation is just the so what. I want you to actually put rubber to road and be able to lead this presentation better from a marketing presentation than when you started. So in order to do that, we're going to look at how to use all this information that we just generated to create compelling, relevant hooks. Okay. So there's a couple of things that we're going to have to do, a few steps that we're going to have to go through. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the empathy map that we did last week. And we'll just use the Human X example because it's very easy for us to converse and we don't have to rehash all the research and everything. We've sort of internalized that for now. So we're going to look at the empathy map, and we're going to look at what items on that empathy map can be addressed by our product or service. We're going to move those items over to the next tab. And in those tabs, the next tab, we're going to rank those items on a 5-point scale. And we put a key in there for you and everything on the basis of appeal, exclusivity, clarity, motivation. There's several factors in there. And we'll explain what those questions are. In fact, we've gone ahead and added that to the sheet as well. And finally, we're going to take those items that we have ranked and we're going to turn them into hooks using a hook generator template that Lee helped me develop. Lee is is a world-class conversion copywriter that works with me in Human X. So yeah, we're going to go through all of that right now. Ashton, is it all right if I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see here.
All right. Yes. All right. Good. Here we go. So this is our empathy map from HumanX from last week. Some of you guys will remember that we went through this live on the call if you were there. It has in it a bunch of items that we generated. So the first 5 rows is our research. And Ashton went through at length the process of research that we go through to generate these items. But we go ahead and plug that into the empathy map. So we know exactly who it is that we're talking about from a demographic, psychographic perspective. We know what their interests are. We know what their affiliations are. We know a bunch of things about them because we've done this research. And then what we did is we took that information and we like meditated on it and we channeled our future perfect customer. And then we did this empathy mapping exercise where from the perspective of the customer, we think about what is that person thinking? What are they seeing? What are they saying? What are they hearing? And we just do like a stream of consciousness dump of all of those items into the empathy map. And really, there are no wrong answers because we're going to evaluate them. So when we do this in a team environment, we just spit it out and write it down. You know, and if it's good, then it'll pan out at the next level. And if it's not good, who cares? Like there are no stupid ideas. We just generate from the perspective of that ideal future client as many of these things as we can. So some examples are, you know, what are they thinking? The ideal prospect for HumanX will be thinking, what do I have to do to get a better ROI on ads, right? They'll be thinking, well, I like my current media buyer, nice fellow, but the results seem to be wavering or they seem to be slipping, right? And that's a problem. They're going to be thinking, I'd rather train people than fire them or replace them. If anybody here has ever tried to source people, it's a very, very expensive proposition and very time consuming and very frustrating to get the right person. So maybe you feel like you have the right person, but their skills aren't there. Those are all things that the ideal future customer of HumanX is going to be thinking about, right? What are they going to be seeing? Well, they're going to be on Facebook and they're going to be seeing competitors posting results, screenshots. They're going to be seeing either diminishing or stagnant ROAS in their own ads dashboard. What are they hearing? They're hearing things like Facebook ads are over. TikTok is the only place you can win now. What are they saying? They're saying, why is so-and-so getting better results than me? I hear this one all the time. If you have clients, you hear this all the time, right? What's the trick to getting a higher ROAS? These are things they're saying. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate this exhaustive empathy map, everything we can think of. And actually, there's a lot more, but I shortened it for the sake of demonstration, obviously. There's a lot more to our offer than just this, but this is just top of mind stuff. So once we've generated all that, we're just going to go through and it's binary. I'm going to click on every one and I'm going to ask the team, does our product or service address this? Yes or no? Right? Either we can fix it or we can't. And we got to be honest about what we can and can't do if we're going to get this right. So we go through it. It's binary. Can our product or service fix getting a better ROI on ads? Damn right it can. So that's a yes, right? Can our product or service fix liking your current media buyer, but not necessarily believing he can get the job done? Yes, it can. That's what we created it for, right? So I go through all of them, and to everything that I answer yes on, I drop them over here in the hook discovery tab. So I've just gone ahead and I've dropped a few in here, right? So what do I have to do to get a better ROI on ads? Now I'm going to rank these according to all these factors. And the key is over here, right? So if you need to look at it, but this is pretty intuitive. And if you understand the Likert scale, then all you're doing is just like 5 is the best, 1 is the worst. But if you need the key's there for you, okay? So according to appeal, how much do I want this? Well, if I want to get a better ROI, that's a general desire that I would think most business owners have. So I'm going to rate that a 3. You can disagree with my ratings, and it doesn't matter. This is just a tool to use to get to the desired result. So it doesn't matter if you agree with me, but it is important that you focus on this being from the perspective of the ideal future customer and not from your perspective as a business owner, right? Very important detail. So let's talk about exclusivity. Is there other offers out there that claim to be able to do this? Yeah, there's probably quite a lot of them. I'd say the majority of other programs are going to claim to be able to do that, right? So then how much do I understand it, or how much does the ideal prospect understand it? I think they understand the idea. I would say they can probably explain it to a friend or understand it at a basic level. So I'm going to go with 4. I'd say most people can understand and explain to a friend why the idea of getting a better return on ad spend, right? And then motivation, this is Maslow's hierarchy. So where is that on the scale of Maslow's hierarchy? I would say really it's a safety thing, because you're talking about perpetuating your business or your employment by having success. So for me, that's a 4, right? And then I'm just going to rank those by just pulling down my rankings. Okay, so it's going to give me the number, the total. So I go through and I rank each one of these, and let's just plug in some numbers here. So we'll go 3, 4, 4, 2. And I really did rank these, but just for the sake of time, I want to get to some questions. So I'm just plugging them in. 3, 2, 2, 2, and then 5, 4, 4, 4, right? So clearly, according to this rack and stack, the idea that I want to work with first, that is going to, I think, have the most success, is going to be the idea that it's expensive to keep hiring and testing new marketing personnel. So instead, I'm going to hire the right person and I'm going to get them trained. So that's what I'm going to go to market with. And I think a lot of business owners here on this call are probably nodding their head going, yes, that is a very valuable, very forward-leaning, very actualizing point of view. So that's what we're going to go to market with. So when I decide to go to market with something, I take that and I plop it into the hook generation. So let me just copy this. All right, copy, and then we build this hook generation template for you. All right, so now I've got my basic sentiment here, and I've got these prompts. These are the 4 or 5 best prompts that we see converting at the highest rates across all of our business. I have my copywriting team collaborate with me on this. So this should be able to prompt you guys into some killer ads, right? So it's expensive to keep hiring and testing new marketing personnel. Let's make that an obvious yes question. Are you tired of continuously having to hire, new marketing personnel, right? ... You get the idea. Don't need to type it all. Okay. That's a hook that I will go to market with. All right. The desired future state. Imagine a world where you no longer have to hire. Well, let's go with positive. Imagine a world where your team performs at a top level and you have confidence to completely remove yourself from the marketing, right? So I'm taking the prompt and I'm just plugging it in there and just manipulating it according to these prompts here, or I'm taking the sentiment rather and manipulating it according to these prompts. First person direct, what do I have to do to get my marketing working? Or to get my team trained? Or really just a win in my business, right? First person direct concerns that the consumer's having, all right? And then we want an if-then statement. If you're wondering how to train your media buying team to a world-class level where they dominate and return super high ROI, then you need human X, right? So just a few ideas of how we're just going to take each one of these sentiments, and there can be more than one sentiment that works out. Usually there will be 4 or 5, right? That'll be closely related or pretty close on total score. So for instance, if this was really my business and I was really doing this, I might take this one, and this one, and do this for all 3 hooks. Pull them into the hook generation tab. And these hooks are going to be the opening lines of your ad copy. And from there, you're going to go on to do exactly what Ashton has instructed you to do and build a moat around that hook, right? And go ahead and flesh that out with information about why is it different or better than what anyone else is offering. You're going to add clarity information. When is it? Where is it? What is it? How is it going down? And we'll give you, actually, I believe it's either next week or the week following, we'll give you the whole conversion heuristic. And if you just list out the elements of the conversion heuristic that we show you, it'll literally tell you what to write next. And then you'll be able to transform these hooks into super high performing marketing collateral that's going to actually generate conversions for you. Why? Because it's based on the underlying reasons why people convert, right? It's not based on what we think is going to work. It's not based on the business owner's perspective of what he thinks is special about his product or service. Nobody cares about that. Consumers care about, is it appealing? Is it exclusive? Do I understand it? Am I motivated to go acquire it? So because those are the underlying sort of pillars that support conversion marketing, and because we use those factors to determine how we were going to go to market, we can go to market with a reasonable expectation that this is going to convert the first time around, right? So for those of you in Heman X already who understand when I say what a phase 0 is, and you always ask me, how do I know what to go right in a phase 0 campaign for the ad? This is how. This is how you know. You do this exercise, it tells you exactly what to write in a phase 0, right? So yeah, that's pretty much our go-to-market strategy rolled out for you. Like, we then take obviously these hooks and we have the copy to generate iterations of it. But this is how we arrive at the what we're going to do. It's not a mystery. It's not guesswork. It's not magic. It's just a process that we employ. And this is it. So hopefully you guys get some value from that. So let's go ahead and hit that next slide.
Awesome. So before we kind of move into kind of summation, open up time for questions, because I'm sure you guys got them. The important thing is here, notice, I love how in our first rounds of coming up with hooks, right? Starting to understand, okay, the mechanisms now starting to open up hooks. It's really important that you don't overstress the beginning side of it. Okay. I think a common mistake, or not even a mistake, I think it's just a lack of awareness for a lot of people trying to do advertising, is that they think the ads that they see from companies like us, that was our first attempt. I think a lot of advertisers, realistically, what you see online today with either YouTube or Facebook, Instagram ads, even TikTok ads, is almost that company's first version of that ad. But I would encourage you to actually expect there to be multiple revisions. And so it's important. That's why it's like, when you're coming up with hooks or angles or ads in general, write it out in the most basic sense. It's okay if it sounds like a compound sentence. It's okay if it doesn't sound that advanced. It's okay if it doesn't sound sexy. In fact, the more basic you can start out at, the more compound thoughts that you have, the easier it is for you to come back through and refine it. Right? To turn that compound sentence into a one-liner that just hits with punch. Right? And so really, as you have these sheets, these are tools to use. And the better I can get you to go, it's going to take me 3 revisions before I have my final ad, the easier it is going to be for you. And so the purpose is just to be thorough and not necessarily be perfect. And you get that suave, that finesse over time as you revise it.
If you've enjoyed this training, you're asking the question, how do I get access to more trainings like this, but also even in deeper detail on Meta, Google, YouTube, TikTok, consumer psychology, copywriting, all that and more? Well, then I've got news for you. There is a program I've created called Heman X, which is a 17-week program designed to train marketers, media buyers, copywriters into the world of advertising and direct response in a modern day age. I and my team manage over $10 million a month in spend across all these social platforms, and there is a library of insights, trainings, and frameworks that I train my team through every single time I hire someone. But also, recently, we've opened these trainings, these exact trainings up that I used to train my internal teams to the public, to people like you who are tired of the gimmicky, step-by-step copy-paste structures, because you understand that those things don't work, or they don't work every time. And so you would like to access a library that is built for all situations, almost every industry, almost every niche. If you're spending at least $10,000 a month on ads, these trainings are for you. And if you'd like to know how you can get your hands on not just more trainings like this, but trainings in all varieties across direct response advertising, and you want in-depth, then I can train you personally. And so around this video, you can click the link to learn more about this program, Heman X, how Over 300 students have already gone through it, implementing these very same practices daily for incredible results. If that's you, find the link around this video and learn more about this incredible program and see if it's a right fit for you.